Hey, everybody. Welcome to a special edition of the Lions of Liberty podcast. As Mark mentioned yesterday on the Monday show, we will probably be doing a little bit more extra content that is actually released to the public. Now, usually our Conspiracy Corner shows like this one are only for our Lions of Liberty Pride members, which you can join at patreon.com/Lions of Liberty. And as Mark mentioned, all of our Patreon supporters, 10% of what you are giving us, we are going to giving over to donor C and Gret Glyer for the work that he's doing to help out with COVID-19. So support us for a good cause. We're going to support him for a good cause. It's good causes all around. But this Conspiracy Corner today, we wanted to follow up the very popular and very well listened to prior episode that you can find by scrolling back in your Lions of Liberty feed. And we're doing this because we wanted to provide people with more info and more of a take. Obviously, this is dominating social discourse, political discourse, and everything else. So we may yet have another one, too, after the stimulus package inevitably gets passed. I won't call it what I wanted to dub it, but let's just say it should be called the Everybody Gets a Shot at It bill, and it's a sex act. I'll leave it at that, since it seems everybody is trying to fit everything into it, a bill that's over 1,400 pages already. So without further ado, here's our Conspiracy Corner. Again, usually this is for Patreon and Pride members only, which encompasses not only this, but other shows like Degenerate Gamblers episodes. For example, we live streamed this show you're going to hear in a moment. We also live streamed a beer pong tournament that Odie and Rico and I played, just talking crap, playing beer pong. Figured, why not? There's nothing else to do. We're recording an episode as well that's audio only that will be coming out later this week. I am now currently writing and recording the new Do Nothing Man episode where he's taking on the coronavirus, and obviously interesting because, as Do Nothing Man says, do nothing, and we are all being mandated by the government to do nothing. Interesting, yes? All right, let's get into it. Hope you enjoy it, and I hope you find it educational and entertaining at the same time.
Hey, Liberty Lions, we are back to talk about the coronavirus again because this is not going anywhere anytime soon, I don't think, and a lot of us are probably home and can use some content. We do not have Dr. Science with us today, but I'm sure a lot of you would be thrilled to have Brian from Electric Liberty Land. And
the man who invented Dr. Science is here, however.
I didn't even realize that was you.
Oh, fuck yeah, it's me, baby.
Nice. So the world owes you Dr. Science and
Do Nothing Man. Yes, exactly right.
Pretty good. You need like one more thing and you can retire, I think.
Hopefully that last thing is a money-making thing rather than the garbage I've created so far that does nothing but give me more work to do.
I'm going to get Dr. Science working on coronavirus.
Where is Dr. Science? We need Dr. Science.
Didn't JB say he was going to come on? I thought like had that whole back and forth, and I swear to God, he was like, "Oh yeah, I'll come on."
I don't think so. But so we're gonna have to rely on all bro science today, I guess. But everyone probably heard Rico's here as well, drinking some Corona.
Exactly. No Odie, who is the most opinionated person on this side, and we know he's around because he's responding to emails and texts. But ignoring the Conspiracy Corner, I think he's too emotionally invested in his position, and he doesn't want to come out and be proven wrong, potentially.
I haven't read this too much. There was too much fucking conversation. I have not been going on Facebook that much recently. What was Odie's position that's controversial at the moment?
He's, this is very real, which I don't think anyone's denying it's real. But I think
some people on our Facebook page are. But yes.
I think he's aboard the worst case scenario possibilities. Like he believes that is a realistic chance if we don't do everything that we're doing now and perhaps more.
No, I didn't think he was taking it that far, but if that's the case.
Well, if he doesn't believe that, come on and correct me.
All right. So let's
I'll be like a WWE wrestler. Like,
Welcome
you got something to say to me?
Welcome to Misrepresentation Radio. Howie, you said that all of the minorities should be put to death, I believe. Go and address that topic.
And remember, the smallest minority is the individual.
Oh, touche. Yeah.
Now, so why don't we, us three are here, what do we think like the seriousness of this thing is?
Okay, so I'll start because why not? I have been crunching the numbers, and by crunching numbers, I've probably read a few different articles today. So my theory is it is, I think, probably 3 times as contagious as the flu, which is, I think, the big problem here. It's much more contagious, and it's contagious for longer. So you can be
also you're asymptomatic, whereas with the flu, you're
Right.
not really contagious until you seem sick.
Yeah.
So you can pass it on. You might have no idea that you're sick. And even if you do know you're sick, it's been probably a week. And in that time, you are potentially passing it on to many other people. The case fatality rate, the worst case scenario, I do not believe.
Yeah.
I believe the case fatality rate.
So you don't believe what the WHO is saying, 3.4%?
No.
I just wanted to make sure we knew what
definitely
we're
not.
disagreeing with. I don't either, but go ahead.
I think it's going to be way under 1% by the time you, like when we look back at this in a year or two, I think the case fatality rate is going to be about, what's the flu? Is it 0.01?
It's 0.1.
So it's okay. So I think this is going to be about a 0.3.
Yeah, I'd agree with that assessment.
So I'd say it's 3 times as contagious as a flu and 3 times as deadly.
So I think the WHO might be right for the world, places with like health systems and pollution and all kinds of whatever. But I think in the US, it's going to be below 1%. I feel like it'll be like,
oh, it's surely.
I feel like it'll be like
1%.
0.5 to 1.
Well, you think about all the shit they put into play. Like, we're all sitting at home now. No one's going out. Like, people know about it. They're social distancing. They're washing their goddamn hands. Even if they didn't quarantine everybody, you would have it way lower than all these other nations anyway, just from that exercise. But also, like Howie and I were talking about, we were waiting for you to get your ass on the call here. The amount of people that are asymptomatic or have a rough, not even a rough 4 days, that have a day or two where they're like, oh, I was a little sniffly and then it went away. Those people aren't getting tested. They're walking around. There's going to be millions of cases like that. And those people are completely fine that aren't counted in the death toll of who had it and who died. So it's going to be way lower than any projection as it is.
Yeah.
So the case fatality rate right now, I think it's like 4.5%. And this is...
I have it up per country. Are you talking about, where are you talking about?
Just total.
Oh, total?
And I think they did that by saying that basically crude fatality rate by total confirmed cases.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So which gets into the problem of what's confirmed and what's not confirmed, and kind of almost it's probably the wrong word for it, but a case bias, because you're only testing the most severe cases.
In the U.S. right now,
like South Korea is much better testing.
Well, in the U.S. right now, it's 1.16. But since we know there's so many people with it who haven't been tested, who aren't dead, it's got to be lower than that. And South Korea was much lower. It was like 0.6 or something.
Right.
And I think that's going to be much closer to ours. But so here's the thing: the numbers of cases and deaths in China and Iran are bullshit. So I'm looking at Korea and I'm looking at Italy, but I'm seeing 2 different things. I don't know if it's all because like South Korea actually has a more free market healthcare system. Like it's not just all free. Like they do have like basic coverage for everyone, but you got to pay for like certain things.
Yeah.
And whereas Italy is totally socialist, but also Italy is one of the oldest populations in the world.
And one of the most, and they're also just on top of each other in tiny, the cities.
Well, they're like that in South Korea too.
It's well, that's true. It's very dense in South Korea, to your point. I think also this might just be something where South Koreans might not be as physical. They might not be as social necessarily. I don't know. It's like hard to say the culture, what the culture has to do with the thing spreading as well. Like taking that into account. And also
like
maybe
we haven't seen a lot of spread and a lot of deaths in Japan, and people were saying like, well, you know what? A lot of people there already wear masks during flu season.
Yeah.
They don't really shake hands. They bow and crap like that. When they say like, oh, hey, this is a big deal. Older people are like, I better stay inside. I don't do that.
So there was the epidemiologist from Stanford who did a study, and they looked at the Diamond Princess cruise, and they said, that's a closed population. So that's basically a closed model that you can study, and they said the case fatality rate was 1% there, but it was a largely elderly population.
So there you go. That's without these people knowing in advance that, look, this is coming.
Right. And
like we all do, like to take the
given the general, right. Given the general U.S. population, he says the death rate among people infected with corona would be about 0.125, which I think will be low. That's going to be low. But
so the thing is, though, in the U.S., with it being so contagious, unlike the flu, where a lot of people are vaccinated or a lot of people have had the flu before and have a bit of immunity, way more percent of the population will be affected. Like it could be like 50, 60% of the population get it. And if like 0.5% of that's like 750,000 deaths.
Right.
Or if it's one, that's like 1.5 million people dead. So, I mean, this is serious, but it's not shut down the economy, lock everyone inside.
Right.
Like this is going to do way more damage.
There's a real thing called economic deaths and economic suicides, which happened. There was a huge increase after 9/11. There was, I don't know, like 10,000 directly and tied economic suicides after 9/11.
Yeah.
Are you laughing at the behind?
Yeah, exactly.
He's laughing at the suicides. Don't let him trick you.
What are you doing? A calf workout back there?
Yeah, he can't hear you.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's like, just think about the 1920s in the stock market. By the way, just aside, have you seen that meme, which is pretty funny? Where it's like, I wanted the roaring 20s, and sure as hell, it's like massive stock market crash, deaths. It's like also no, and all the bars are closed.
Yeah,
I really hope speakeasies come back. That would be.
Dude,
there are speakeasies.
Well,
really?
Hey, yeah, there definitely are. And by the way, do you see Mark and I drinking at a bar on St. Patty's Day?
You're selfish. That's probably why Odin didn't come on. He wanted to. He was so angry.
Yeah, but no,
I had a business idea for this. An all Corona confirmed bar. Because if you have Corona, chances are, statistically speaking, you're not that sick, right? You're quarantining yourself, but you're probably bored, especially for 2 weeks. Like after 3 or 4 days, you're like, all right, I'm feeling better. So go to a bar that's staffed by someone who is Corona positive, and other people with Corona can go and hang out with you. And how do you get there?
You don't have to worry about getting your grandma sick. You just hang out in the Corona bar.
Exactly. Yeah. And how do you get there? You're driven in an Uber by someone also Corona positive.
It's the Corona economy.
We're going to have like parallel societies.
Well, it's like already what happens with herpes people and AIDS people, right? Don't they already have those things?
This is why they need to let the free market work.
Yeah, fucking A.
Like, here's the thing. As we said, we do think this is a serious thing, mostly for people that are older, have pre-existing conditions, or immunocompromised. But the stuff the government's doing is going to cause a lot of harm. Rico's idea is a way better idea than what the government's doing. But on the flip side of that, Thomas Massey was talking about kind of the opposite, saying like, if we got out of the way and let companies like make these cheap and expensive test kits, imagine you own a business. Do you want to pay your people to sit home, where they show up every morning, you give them a test like, oh, you don't have it? Good, go on in. Or even a blood test where you could see if you have antibodies, meaning you had it and are now immune. It's like, oh, those people shouldn't need to stay home. They're not going to get it. They're not going to pass it to anyone. Right. They're fine. But instead, we have a quarter of the nation on lockdown right now.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think corporations are paying their employees hazard pay to show up to work right now or not? Like grocery people, pharmacies. It's one of those things where you almost are like, like when you have to go into a military combat zone and you're a journalist, you get like hazard pay because you're in danger. I mean, if I'm a corporation, I'm like, well, I'm making money when everybody else isn't. Maybe I'll give these people a little bit more money, hazard pay, to encourage them to keep coming in.
It's interesting you said corporation, though, because I think that one of the bills that the Congress was trying to pass, mandating paid sick leave.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like Congress is paying for it. They're just telling businesses, you got to pay.
No, exactly.
But
it's fucking bullshit.
It exempts anyone with over 500 employees. So all the big corporations, none of them have to do it. It just kills all the small businesses.
I love how
what do those people do? They go work for the big businesses then, because that's all they can do.
I like how you both have made points back to me about things that I already talked about on this week's Electric Liberty Land. So thanks for listening.
Don't have time.
Don't have time now, sitting around doing nothing. Great. But yeah, exactly right. It's companies the government's forcing companies to pay all these leave. And it's like, how the fuck are they going to afford that? And then the government's like, well, good news. I'll tell you how to afford it. We're going to bail you out. We're going to provide you with $1 million in a small business loan. And you're like, great. Yeah, right. So you're forcing me to go into debt and pay my employees way more money. And now I have to pay that back on top of trying to make money again once the fucking economy starts. Thanks, government.
Or even like no evictions now. Hey, guess what, everybody? Yeah. Rent's about to go up because who knows when the government's going to say no evictions again.
Well, my thought on that was
seriously,
like, there's probably, I don't know, a lot of legal issues with this, but just kind of on a simple baseline, most of the mortgages are owned by banks, right?
Yeah.
Or the banks own the mortgages on houses. They own the mortgages on, commercial real estate. So if you tell the banks, all right, listen, you're going to do a 2-month holiday on mortgages and from homes, commercial buildings, residential apartment buildings, whatever. So the owner of that business doesn't have to pay the mortgage or rent payment, whatever, for those 2 months. And therefore, that person can't charge the individual mortgage or rent payments or whatever for those 2 months. So it's kind of like a trickle down. So if the service industry worker can't pay their mortgage, well, they don't have to anyways. But the problem normally would be, well, if they don't pay their mortgage, then the person who they're paying at is not going to be able to make their payment to the bank. But if you don't have to have that subsequent payment to the bank for 2 months, then you can say, look, everyone's kind of neutral for 2 months. And that way you're not cutting checks. And I don't think the economic impact would be as severe. Well, whether or not the government could actually do that or with all those different contracts and kind of interfering in those contracts, probably problematic. But I think it's a better solution than giving everyone a check for $1,200 or whatever they're talking about now.
So how about this? The Federal Reserve's going to lend an additional $1 trillion a day to large banks.
Yeah. Which I don't understand the concept.
And they got rid of the reserves. Like banks had to have 10% of the money that they are supposedly have.
For a bank,
now it's nothing. Whatever.
The only rationale I can see for we're lowering the interest rates would be if banks had to borrow money in case people were making cash runs, fearing, for the economy.
I did hear that was happening in the Hamptons.
In the Hamptons, they're like, we need to get all the crisp $100 bills if we're going to keep doing safe.
They
cocaine.
Ran out of $100 bills.
We need the new $100 bills if we're snorting cocaine with them. Otherwise, we might get coronavirus.
So the news story did say they ran out of $100 bills. Do you think people are like, I'm not taking those 20s? What am I, some plebe?
Probably, yeah. That makes a lot of sense, actually. If I go to the bank, I want $100 bills too. But here's the thing.
Can I get this in ones, please?
But they also I don't understand just the concept of okay, we're going to lower interest rates, how they think that would really help spur the economy on, because if nobody's working, there's no businesses that are going to be borrowing that money. There's no businesses starting up to borrow from the banks anyway. So how the fuck is that going to have any effect other than giving money, just charity money to the banks or the government?
So
that kind of brings up a question. I don't know if I'm cutting off Howie there, but at some point I wanted to talk about how your perception of how Trump's handled this so far. So
one thing real quick about that, Brian, you're making really good points, but your points are kind of this is a short-term thing. They're talking about this being 18 months potentially. And I think martial law is coming nationwide, and the whole economy is just got to be destroyed. There's no way around it. That's the thing though. It's over.
You can't have this for that long. People will start rebelling. If I had a small business that was going to shut down right now, I would just stay open. I'd be like, I'm open. I don't care. I'm fucking open.
People can't stand for this. They can't.
Yeah.
No,
I don't think Americans will either.
No, there's a limit to what you can tolerate.
While we still have the guns, they can't do it.
Yeah.
Well, China's relatively back to normal in 2 months.
Well, and supposedly that's the question. Are they though? I mean,
I've seen information to the contrary, at least in Wuhan.
Well, I have pretty firsthand accounts of what life is like
in Wuhan.
That's true.
No, not in Wuhan.
I'm talking about in Wuhan.
Well, yeah, okay, but there's in most commercial areas, the big cities are relatively back.
Well, they locked shit down in Wuhan pretty aggressively.
But that was pretty late in the game that they did that.
That's true. That's why the world has a pandemic going on.
And so you have to think if they started to lock them down in mid-January, and the first case was probably October, November, that's 2 months into this.
Yeah.
So it was spreading unchecked for 2 months.
Well, it spread slowly, then quickly.
What does that mean? It's been so. That's what the media keeps saying.
If you have one person, then the next day you have 2 people, and then the next day you have 4, until you're going from like 100 to 200 to 4.
Yeah, I get that. It's like the Wayne's World, and they tell 2 people, and they tell 2 people. But
right.
If we're ahead of this. To Rico's point, though, we're ahead of this. I mean, it's like the same thing with the cruise shipping example, where Wuhan, it's in there, supposedly from a wet market, and now the government's talking about we need to ban wet markets. Fuck off, idiotic. But now you've got people ahead of it. It's not sneaking up on anybody. Right. Italy is the last country it's sneaking up on, except for maybe a despotic government in Africa, if it ever makes it there.
Do you know why Italy got hit like that?
I would think they're elderly Oh, yeah, and the Wuhan people. Like they sold all their factories to them.
Yeah, they had all these people from Wuhan working in Italy. They sold all their I think mining and all the stuff to the Chinese.
Oh wow.
All right. So Rico, your question was good. How's Trump?
Well, hold on a second, real quick. I have at my downstairs bar. I have Fox News on mute, and they have total confirmed cases worldwide 298,000. Total deaths 12,000.
Those numbers are behind. It's actually 303,055 right now.
Okay.
By the way, quick fact from the Facebook group, Coleman is in here commenting. He said that Italy also has a much higher average death rate than from the seasonal flu, 50,000 deaths a year, which is a lot for a small country. So to the point that they're culturally on top of one another, they spread shit because they're always like, kissy, huggy, all that shit. Yeah.
So different than the Japanese.
But anyways, the CFR per these statistics is 0.04.
See, and you know how I think you should calculate it? Like if you do cases over deaths, the number is going to be too low, right? Or no? Fuck. Why can't I think?
Cases over deaths.
Here's the thing. Some people wonder, should you do cases over deaths or cases over recoveries? Yeah. Because we don't know what's going to happen with the other people. I think one way to do that is normally if you're going to die, it happens about day 14. So anyone after day 14, consider they're going to be fine, and they put that in the denominator column. Or if it's before that, we're not really sure.
Well, how are you going to get those accurate of statistics?
We're not going to know until this
are you
out.
12 days in? Or are you 14 days in? Or
so this is I don't even think I should mention this, but I'm going to, because there's 1,000 explanations. But knowing that China lied about the number of deaths and cases, somebody pointed out that their mobile phone subscribers there, the subscriptions, there's 8 million less now than a few.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, people they couldn't pay the bills because they were, locked in their apartments.
That's true too, right?
There's a lot of different reasons why that could be the case.
I do not believe for a second that 8 million people in China died.
No, I don't either. But I'm saying it's curious that many less people now have mobile phone subscriptions.
Who has those numbers? Where do
they looked at their records at a bunch of the different mobile carriers.
And those are just, do they do a Freedom of Information Act?
Dude, I told you I shouldn't even mention this.
I want to know how they got their numbers. Like they call
it wasn't a number worth taking seriously, just a number worth put in the back of your head, I wonder if something's, there's no reason to believe.
No, I think that's probably more economic than, I'm sure some of them are deaths, but
I don't think that number's based in any factual situation at all.
Also, if they're dying, I mean, shit, half the time you die and your cell phone service just keeps going anyway. Exactly. So that's no indication. I'm sure dead people are still being billed 2 years back and they're like, we want you back. You owe us $150. We're just going to keep on rolling it over and then bill your family.
Yeah.
But yeah, Rico, your question about Trump and handling this. So 2 thoughts on that. One is that I saw that his overall rating has gone up quite a bit since he started rolling out these authoritarian measures, telling you just how stupid Americans are. But the other thing is I actually liked his initial approach of people were saying, oh, he should have said how horrible this is from the get-go, which was just for the cause, in my opinion, far more fucking panic, far worse hoarding, far worse everything.
Like that reporter yesterday. when he was asking about, he's like, all these deaths, all this, that, what do you say to make people feel better? He's like, I'd say you're a terrible reporter.
Is that the way he framed the question? Is that the way he framed the question? Because when I read it, he's like, what do you say to American?
Yeah, before that, he was trying to like ramp up the fear as the media.
Yeah,
does.
they all are, because they know it's
And
ratings, it's clicks, it's everything.
It's like good. I mean,
it's a feeding frenzy. Think about how badly the networks had done. I would be surprised if goddamn CNN went over and fucking started feeding people bat sandwiches in Wuhan to get this thing started, because their ratings were so shitty.
Yeah.
That this is like the only thing saving them. Like all these, like other than Fox News, they'd all been going straight into the trash. So this is a godsend. Of course, they're going to play it out to the fucking moon and back and make sure that everybody knows about it. So for me, Trump's handling of it, I disagree with any sort of mandates put into place. And so far, we don't have a federal mandate, which I think is awesome. I think that he should have slow played it until you know exactly what's going on and taken all the factors into account. So I think he's done a fine job with it. I have no fucking. If anything, I think
I liked
taking it slow and said, though, look, don't panic, don't hoard. This is America. We have plenty of fucking supplies. We have plenty of truckers. Don't worry about it.
I really like the initial moves where they're like cutting CDC and FDA regulations. Like, we're going to waive all this stuff. We're going to get that test in a day. If a doctor, you can, get your license work in a different state in a day. We're going to have telemedicine where you can talk to doctors in different states, like all that deregulation stuff. I'm like, yes, great. Until they're like, and we're going to spend like $1 trillion just mailing people checks. And
that shit's
like,
fucking idiotic. Yeah, agreed.
Don't just
I heard even Trump and Schumer had suggested something that was like a logical change to the testing or something like that. And Trump was just like, fine, do it. Which I also
no. They were so Trump had like invoked that whatever act that allows
Defense Production Act, but it was for was it for ventilators,
for things like that. And Schumer asked him to like start doing it, and he's like, okay.
Yeah, he was like, do it.
To me, that business government cooperation is fascism. And I don't like it.
It is fascism, but what I did like about it at least was that it shows that Donald Trump isn't just playing on a team mentality. He's like, whatever in his mind is gonna get it done. So I like that aspect of it. But yeah, agreed. The bailouts are ridiculous. It's not gonna for what? Like you said earlier, a check for $1,200 or I guess $2,500 a couple is not gonna help when you've got your business closed.
So listen to this though.
They're just gone.
GM has offered to make ventilators. Inditex has offered to make hospital scrubs. Alibaba has donated 1.1 million testing kits.
Tesla, I thought, was going to
Tesla said they're like, we'll make them if you need them.
Yeah, so there you go. Free market at work.
And who's paying those companies for those products?
We are. But I mean, we honestly probably do need them. But I'm not for this government way of doing it. I think there's regulations in place that stop those things from being available to begin with. Like I saw one thing where it was like, oh, now this company can send them to the hospitals instead of only industrial, whatever. It's like, wait, they weren't allowed to give them to hospitals before?
Right. Probably
wasn't that one of the problems with the South Korean test kits? Weren't they using them? They were produced by a company in the U.S. They were sent to, like, not all of them, but a fairly big chunk of the test South Korea used were produced by a company in the U.S., and the U.S. was allowed to use them, or the different hospitals and whatnot were not allowed to use them because they weren't per some kind of code.
And for at first it was like the CDC, okay, we can use theirs, and like, oh, there's something wrong with ours, but we're not going to let you use anybody else's yet.
Hold on,
and like all this.
There's two big lies that are going around that Biden is. I don't know. They talked about this on the Democratic Recap show, but one of the lies is that the Trump fired that it's because he fired the pandemic response.
Right, yeah.
This nonsense. He reorganized the CDC because they were doing all this bullshit. Like they were doing transgendered studies and
the vaping epidemic.
Focus on that. God, how much fucking money and time on the vaping epidemic?
When we have a real epidemic, it kind of puts that in a whole lot of perspective.
Yeah, they were doing PSA
sons of bitches
about bullshit. So he's like, no, he didn't eliminate anyone. So
he tried to cut the budget, but it never passed. It never happened.
Right. And what was the other? Oh, the other big lie that say is like the WHO offered us tests and we refused. And the WHO was like, I don't know what he's talking about there. That's and even if it did happen, like what kind of number did he think the WHO offered us like 300 million test kits?
See, I am 100% convinced if we had an actual
He
real.
is.
Oh, I thought you weren't talking. You were like cutting in and out, Rico.
Yeah, your internet
yeah.
connection is being throttled.
But I really think if
Probably on
the
Fortnite again.
if all these rules and regulations weren't there, the free market could provide these, like, I don't know, not that South Korea's government probably paid for theirs, but I mean, we could have the level of testing that they do. Because here's the thing, everybody's pissed off at millennials because like they don't care, they're that kind of sick, they're doing thing. I think if people knew that they had it, they would be like, oh, I should probably stay home. Whereas you don't know, and they're telling you anybody could have it. You may not even have any symptoms. It's like, whatever. But if we actually had testing, if people knew they had it, they'd be like, oh, I'll stay home. I don't want to get anyone else sick. I really think Americans would do that.
I'm sure I think they would too. But it's at the same time, it's like one of those things where mandating everybody stays home is just so goddamn stupid when a lot of people will just recover very easily and should go out and should keep the economy going. Because, I said this on Electric Liberty Land too, the people that are most enabled to stay home, can afford to do it, or already getting government goddamn checks in the mail are the fucking elderly people. So that like they can self-quarantine so easily to force everybody to do it and shut economy down and ruin businesses. It's insane.
So like I'm still working, but all the people in my office that are high risk or taking care of someone that's high risk have been sent home. So,
well, that's really what they should have been doing to begin with. They shouldn't be doing mass quarantines. They should be doing targeted quarantines and being, they can extend FMLA if you have some autoimmune disease. Yeah. All right, you're on FMLA. Or if you're elderly or, you quarantine and we will make sure that someone sanitary delivers your meals for the next month.
How much cheaper would it be to send the elderly to like a all-inclusive lockdown casino, like
a cruise,
like
send them on
camp?
They
send them to a camp.
They love.
No, I'm saying like the gambling in Vegas is shut down anyways. Instead, send the seniors there and let the government.
They
pick
love
up the
Atlantic
bill.
City.
Each get like $1,000 a day. I don't know. It'd be way cheaper than shutting down the economy and just sending all of your American $1,000.
Look, here's the thing too. When we're talking about government dole outs and putting people on these programs that are elderly or immune deficient. The thing that always comes back to me is that you've got the government dole out there. You've got people that are already getting money. You've got like people that are like, oh, they'll be taken care of because they're on Social Security. When you look at what this has actually caused in a lot of cases on the good side of things, is people are giving a lot more of a shit. They are actually asking what's going on with their neighbors. Like I asked my neighbor behind me who's older. I was like, do you need me to go get you anything? If we didn't have government taking care of these people, you would have communities actually come together and do it on their own. You'd have people buying groceries and going out and like taking care of it rather than people just kind of saying, well, what the fuck? The government will take care of them. Why should I don't need to worry about it. And kind of going from there. So.
Dude, this Malarkey, I think it's called Malarkey, whiskey place near me that I went on a tasting thing to recently. They're now making hand sanitizer and stuff.
Yeah, a local one by us is doing that same thing. R6.
Like, there's a lot of things. I love that they're lifting these regulations where, okay, now you can take cocktails to go, or now you can do this and that. It's like, why couldn't we do this all along? I think there's a lot of good things that have happened from this that we can argue as libertarians to maybe improve some things. But there's going to be a lot of government overreach, a lot of authoritarianism, and we know with the Patriot Act and everything else, that shit's not going away unless we really fight it.
Well, coming into the conspiracy corner aspect of this, what do you think is going to come from this that is going to stay? And granted, they might do a lot more shit after this episode. God. I'm sure we'll need a part 3, but what's going to stay now, like the fucking Patriot Act?
The threshold for government instituting totalitarian measures has gone down. Accepted this so willingly. It's unbelievable to me. Even the people that
are begging for it,
most anti-Trump because he's OMG Hitler, is like he's not doing enough authoritarian measures. He's telling you to stay in your homes. And they're talking about National Guards, which I wouldn't be surprised if those, that's not enough for these people. Which
I don't know. If Remsen told me I couldn't leave my house, I'd just be like, whatever, dork, and I push him down.
Well, it's going to be people with big guns that are authorized to kill you by law. So I think, the people have seen this once in their life and nothing authoritarian ever goes away, right?
Yep.
The Patriot Act is here 20 years later. The wars in Afghanistan and Iraq are here 20 years later. One thing I was thinking, this will never happen, but it would thrill me to death if Trump's like, you know what, we just did this $2 trillion stimulus. I don't care. We cannot afford to be in Iraq and Afghanistan anymore. It's
Yeah.
hard choice we have to make. Bring everyone home. This is the only way we can pay for it.
Dude,
That'll never happen.
Some general is saying like, wait, we can't leave Afghanistan. The troops are actually safer here now.
Well, I don't know what the amount of goddamn cases in Iran. I don't know if I believe that. There's got to be some crossbreeding there.
Well, not really. Afghanistan, Iran.
Well,
and can they? Maybe this is going to lead them to attack Iran. They're like, well, they're so weak right now. We can take out the Ayatollah. Who knows?
So it's interesting, though. We mentioned how this affects the older. Like if you're 80 plus, 14.8%, 77.8%. 2 people in Congress have it now. Somebody on Mike Pence's staff has got it now. Can you imagine if this runs through Congress, which these are the high-risk people?
Yeah.
Crazy. A bunch of people in Iran's government.
Is the next Democratic debate going to be Bernie Sanders and Biden rolling out in giant hamster bubbles? That's how they should. Like, remember that American Gladiators? Or like, it was American Gladiators, right, where they'd roll out, and that's how they fight.
That was great.
That's the next debate. So it'll keep them both safe, and whoever wins by bashing the other person into the goal or whatever, that's who wins the debate. What's the point in doing anything else anyway?
One thing I wanted to mention, and I heard this yesterday, de Blasio was, I don't know why it was in Cleveland, but they were showing or playing clips of de Blasio's press conference on the radio, and he's like, look, I just can't do it. I just don't have the power. And he's basically saying he needs Trump to order in the Army Corps of Engineers, come in and build hospitals and whatever. And I'm like, So I just Googled the budget of New York City, $93 billion.
Oh, yeah. Well,
okay.
Actually, he doesn't have any budget because they spend it all on fucking bullshit.
Well, yeah.
Anyway,
yeah.
The MTA in New York is like completely bankrupt.
Yeah, that's because they're incompetent and status, whatever.
Yeah,
but theoretically, you do have the money. And are there no empty buildings in all of New York City? Zero? Yeah. I don't believe that. So go find an empty building, take your budget, go hire one of the hundreds of contractors in New York City and say, hey, gut this building. Put new drywall, put some new heating ducts and everything in, and roll in some hospital beds. Yeah. So what do you need the Army Corps of Engineers? You already have the infrastructure. You have the space somewhere. Figure it out.
Obviously, that's a statist way of doing things, but that is what China did. They claim they build hospitals quickly. And I heard that's what a lot of the military is focused on right now is like MASH units. But at the same time, I mean, you wouldn't even need the government to get involved. Again, if you deregulate everything, you'd have private contractors that are like, look, my guys wear ventilators. It'll protect them from the virus. They'll go in. They'll get this shit built up with some fucking drywall. They'll coat it.
That's what I'm saying. But de Blasio could pay. Like theoretically, the city could enter into contracts with these contractors and retrofit an abandoned high rise in 2 weeks.
Agreed, but why would the city even need to? Think about if
so
a private medical institution come like from a country that's not impacted could come in and be like, hey, we're like doctors across borders could be like, hey, we need a company to build a fucking hospital. We'll come in and do our servicing there. You could, we'll split the revenue from it. We'll charge an affordable amount. We'll throw up a building. We got the doctors available. We'll bring them home from fucking on these flights that have nobody in them. And then boom, you got your goddamn medical hospital set up. No problem. The free market took care of the issue.
Hey, Brian, you said, why would they build them? Just for our listeners who didn't hear the first part, who haven't been watching the news. As we know, this isn't that deadly in and of itself, but the big concern is that if a lot of people get it at the same time, it'll overwhelm our healthcare system like it's done in Italy. And so that's why there's a need for more hospital beds, more ICU beds, more ventilators, more, masks, this kind of thing. Just in case anyone didn't know, just want to bring it up. But I want to ask you guys one last thing about the way Trump is doing things. Just not that this is important, but to the press, apparently this is like the biggest deal ever. Him calling it the China virus.
Oh yeah.
Opinions?
Go to Rico.
It's typical Trump reaction. Like if you hit him, he's going to hit back. And Wade trying to hit him was saying, "Oh, well, you know what? Why do you say it originated in China? The U.S. Army was in Wuhan, and that's a whole other thing. But maybe it was from the U.S. Army. So, or maybe it started somewhere else. So they're trying to. It didn't start here, and he's like, yeah, it's the China virus. It's just him saying, you come at me, I'm going to come at you harder.
Of course. And he does it over and over and over again because he also wants to make sure that if it tanks the economy, that at the end of the day, he can be like, look, this isn't my fault. This is China's fault. And hopefully it won't impact, because we always said the only thing that would take Trump out would be the economy crashing in the next election cycle. So he's trying to give himself a backdoor out of saying there's nothing I could control. China did this. And hopefully that'll get people to give another term.
So I don't have a problem with it. I don't think I'd call it the China virus. I would call it the Wuhan flu.
Yeah.
Just because Chinese is like a nationality. I'd call it the Wuhan flu because I do think it is important to realize this started there and they lied about it for months. They tried to cover it up. I would bet anything that the fact that the Wuhan Institute of Virology was like 8 miles from where they're saying this started, that this was some gain of function testing that accidentally got out. And it's their fault. They lied, made it so much worse. We have a world pandemic now. It's China's fault. And they're trying to spin the whole press like, oh, look how good we managed this. And now we're helping Italy. And what they're helping Italy, they're selling Italy shit. They're not just giving it to them.
So there was last time we talked about some different kind of elements of a conspiracy. One, like it could be naturally occurring. It could be, escaped from the Wuhan biolab. And it could have been maybe the U.S. did it.
Dude, yeah, we said that. I am like, wait, did China listen to our episode? And now they're like, yeah, let's say that.
That would be great.
I'm like, well, we did have these soldiers there during the thing. I'm like, I don't think they
Rico's girlfriend's been a plant all along to feed the Chinese government media tips.
Man, I will be fired if Chinese are like, well, we heard it from the Lions of Liberty.
If China listens,
I work for the Chinese government. I did work for them for several
years. Not your ad money. So we have a special $1 million ad buy per episode. So.
By the way, did you see, real quick, just on the name China virus, I do think that it's definitely something where it's like it can inspire people to have adverse reactions to Chinese people here, which I'm not a fan of, or think that Chinese food should be eaten here and home. But did you see there's a meme going around where it's like people are like, well, it's racist to call it that, which it's not. But they're like, it's racist. And then they cut to China or Mexico. And right now on the Tijuana border, they've got like piñatas that look like viruses with Chinese.
Yeah.
That's a great meme.
I mean, and China can say, oh, you're racist. All they want to be like, wait, what about the Uyghurs? Can we talk about that?
Yeah, the Uyghurs. Yeah.
Well, but so there's one conspiracy we never even, I don't know if we never considered or we definitely never talked about. And this is one, my gal pal, she was all about us as the U.S., because she's Chinese, so she's blaming the U.S. And then she's like, you know what? Maybe it was the Chinese and we did it intentionally.
Yeah, false flag.
Because not only that, because this is hurting the U.S. economy so much more than it's hurting the Chinese economy. And they don't care if a few 8 million theoretically people die, and whatever.
Listen go ahead.
No,
I just wanted to say, we keep thinking it's not that deadly, so it's probably not a bioweapon. But what if it's an economic weapon?
Yeah, this is hurting the U.S. economy, and part of that is because of how we're reacting. But the Chinese economy didn't go down that much. It's certainly not as much as at least the U.S. stock market.
But also, if you hit yourself first, you'll recover first.
Yeah,
you could then become number one.
Especially if you know what roughly the death rate would be. And I do like the concept that it's an economic weapon because you look at it's not like it's taking out 25% of the population. It's not like it's causing people's eyeballs to fall out and then blood to come out of their bodies like Ebola. It is essentially a super flu that is manageable if you have enough product and if you have enough supplies and enough notice. So,
which everyone buys from China.
Yeah,
and where's all the medicine?
The drugs, including the fucking drugs.
And they have nationalized those 3M masks. So it seems like
it's risky though if that were the plan, because it could end up us taking our supply chains out of there and a lot of other places do that too.
That was my counter. It's like, well, it might backfire because this could lead to Trump and getting the message across, hey, we should not be producing everything in China. But, I mean, maybe risks they're willing to take and the trade war. And the other element to this that she brought up was the protests in Hong Kong. They were so sick of the protests in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
But they could not roll in the tanks because the whole world is watching. But the protests in Hong Kong are pretty much dissipated now because they don't want to be susceptible to the flu, so they're not gathering just on their own initiative. So this has pretty much wiped out the protests in Hong Kong. And apparently Lam is going to be, her term is going to be ending next year or sometime soon.
Mhm.
So this might have had the dual victory of ending the Hong Kong protests without having to use military force and really taking over the U.S. economy during a time of a trade war.
Well, on
Americans
another
are
note, too.
Americans are so spun up about this. They don't give a shit about Hong Kong right now.
Well,
But
also,
a good
man-
thing, they don't give a shit about pronouns right now or transgender athletes or any
True.
of this other nonsense. It's
Thank
like,
God
wait,
for that.
there's a real thing happening. Who cares about
Thank
that?
God for that. But also, we mentioned the, however you say it, the Uyghurs, the Uggers, whatever
I
the fuck
thought
you
they're
We-
Uggers, yeah.
I
So
don't know how to pronounce it.
Hui, I feel like Hui, UI, so maybe it's Uyghurs.
I thought it's Uyghurs. Because
Uyghurs?
I always, the first
Is
time I heard
Uyghurs?
it, the first time I heard it, I thought it was funny because it sounds like Uyghurs.
Yeah, Uyghurs. Well, no, but also think about under the guise of, the sickness spread through, there's X million Chinese dead, right? They just report the broad numbers. They're not reporting very specific cities, so they probably fudge those numbers. Think about that. They've got these camps, these re-education training camps where people are being put and dying anyway. They could literally use this as an excuse, wipe out that entire mini population, or at least those who aren't going along, easily, and then be like, oh, they died of coronavirus, and just kind of lump that into the overall numbers.
Dude, there were some reports. I mean, I can't verify any of this, but they were saying they wanted Wuhan to look like it's back to business. So they took the Uyghurs from the concentration camps and they're like, you guys are going to work in these factories and doing this shit.
Well, one thing I do know is that people from Wuhan are out now in China because she runs an Airbnb business over there. And, in China, you have your ID where it's telling you where you're from. So there's people from Wuhan now trying to book her place, and you can tell where they're from. So at least those people that were locked up are out and about. So I would say that the complete lockdown is over.
Yeah.
So I do believe that.
So there's something I think we do need to talk about. Like, as I mentioned, I think that this probably was a mistake and got out of the lab, but there is the possibility that China did this on purpose. Like we we're just saying, there is the possibility that the US could have come there when we were there for the military games and done it on purpose. But something else that people need to know about, and again, I think it was an accident. I don't think any of these parties are guilty, but they all could be. I don't know. The Event 201, which was the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the World Economic Foundation, and Johns Hopkins University, like in October, I think it was, had a simulation of a coronavirus pandemic that killed 65 million people. And the way their scenario played out and the way things are happening right now is almost exactly the same. It's so crazy. And you would think they would be like, when this happened, they'd be like, oh, well, we just did an exercise on the exact same thing. These are the things we learned. They haven't said a goddamn thing about it.
Yeah.
They're keeping that pretty tight-lipped. And at the end of it, they had these takeaways where they wanted to like have this kind of like global governance type thing to manage these kind of things and these government public cooperations. And there's got to be all this misinformation. We have to clamp down on social media and all these things.
That shit's definitely happened.
And it's like, I'm not saying Bill Gates is behind this, but this happening, I think it's the Rahm Emanuel, don't let a good crisis go to waste thing. I think the elites are going for these aims now. They're like, well, shit, this is happening. Let's take as much power as we can. Let's screw local or national laws. We got to do what we got to do for the good of the people.
Yep.
And we got to shut people up. They can't be spreading misinformation. People can't just be saying whatever. It needs to come from authority.
Well, has anybody been arrested yet that we know of in during this pandemic in any of the countries for spreading quote unquote misinformation yet?
So when they were doing this exercise and talking about it, the Chinese people recommended like, oh yeah, those people should just be executed.
Oh, that's great.
But yeah, here I think maybe we're seeing like the deplatforming and the banning from because the tech companies are working with the government. We know.
Well, obviously, yeah. The hand in hand. What about that outage?
We're going to get teddy bear. We're getting teddy bear fascism here. Is what we're going to get. We're not gonna be.
Well, what about the Facebook outage where everything with coronavirus was getting like
The one article I posted from the
blackout.
Mises Institute was just to like get banned.
Yeah. So there you go, man. It's like they accidentally flipped the switch a little too early. The government's like, no, Facebook, not yet. Turn it back down.
So I'm saying,
It does seem weird when I was just thinking about the virus. I mean, it just seems weird. Most viruses that are more potent are less contagious, right?
Yeah.
So it almost,
or even if they're contagious, because people die so quick, they don't get a chance to spread it.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is both. It's more contagious and more deadly, which
but not too deadly.
Right.
That's even better. That's better for a weapon.
That's what I was saying. That's why it makes sense as an economic weapon because it's like in the fucking Vietnam where you fall into a punji pit, right? You're not dead. You're just infected and and you can't function properly, but you're not dead. You're not going to die from it necessarily unless you let it go too long. But it slowed everybody down. It fucked up your plans. This virus is the punji pit. It slows you down. It cripples your economy. It gets in the way of anything you're trying to accomplish. But at the end of the day, you're probably going to be okay.
That's like when people talk about AR-15s are like so dangerous. It's like, those bullets are actually made more to wound than to kill because in war, if you wound someone, then you got two guys taking care of them too. So it takes out more people.
Yeah. If you want to kill somebody, you make a lead bullet that just squishes inside of them.
There's much deadlier things than
the shrapnel bullets. Yeah.
It's like these are meant to like maim and wound mostly. But man.
Well, there was two things I was going to say we should do. We should do predictions on how this is going to go for the next month, and
I have to say this before I forget, though. The last thing about Bill Gates, it's super important. He was doing an Ask Me Anything recently, and he was talking about shit. It has, so you know how he's funding all these vaccinations and stuff. They're working on this technology where I think you get implanted with like this chip, and you can tell who's been vaccinated and who hasn't in this like ID 2020 thing. He was talking about his Ask Me Anything about these digital certificates, and people are like, wait, we get issued, it would be like a card or something. But they're actually working on this, like you get vaccinated with something that puts like a chip in you, and then they can tell. So it'd be like, we've got forced coronavirus vaccines, and if you don't get it, your chip's not lit. You're not allowed in. You can't do shit.
Well, this is like scary.
In
India.
It's not to scary high tech stuff.
Yeah, it's not to that level. But there was a passenger. They were doing stamps in India, right? And so a passenger got on a plane, and someone noticed his. It's like a permanent stamp, not a permanent.
Yeah, it was a train. They don't have planes in India.
Right. So Bill Gates' idea sounds like the mark of the beast to me.
Well,
Brian, I knew you walked away, but it would like be this implanted thing that it can tell what vaccines you've gotten. So if we say this vaccine's mandatory, you didn't get it, and they scan you, you're like, sorry, bud, you can't engage in commerce. You can't do anything. You need to be arrested or put back in your house.
Yep.
Like, that's some crazy, scary tech. Yeah.
Rico, well, it seems like
I do want to do predictions, but one thing that might make this all not a big deal at all is the fact that we might have a workable solution to treating people. Well, should we talk about that?
I want to put the damper on that. Well, you guys bring that up while I get it.
We want to put the damper on it?
No, I said the FDA. At the press conference, they were trying to like slow walk that a little bit.
Well,
I'm trying to give people hope. I'm trying to be good.
Yeah,
all the negative.
And also the trials that were actually published by Nature had 100% success rate. So,
that's nice. That was for the malaria drug, right? Malaria drug?
Yeah. So
I also heard that the HIV drugs were also very effective, which makes sense because they're viral treatment drugs, but they're so expensive in theory that I can't see rolling them out.
Right. So hydrochloroquine or chloroquine is cheap and widely available. Like actually my wife is on hydrochloroquine for lupus.
Oh yeah, you mentioned that, yeah.
But I told her, I'm like, hey, you might want to get an early refill. At this
she
just got a refill. She called her doctor. Her doctor's like, yeah, you're right. They called it in. Nobody has it. They're like, maybe
already
2 weeks, maybe a couple months. So I'm like, well, you called like the day after it became a thing. So hopefully it'll be 2 weeks and not longer.
Yeah. Well, again, how hard is it to ramp up production of that shit? I know. And also, I think
3 companies are ramping up production of it.
Well, Mylar also said they were going to start ramping up and doing testing on another one of their drugs that they think is going to be effective against it too. Yeah. I can't remember the name of it.
So there's chloroquine and there's hydrochloroquine. The people that did the thing in France were using hydrochloroquine, where it was like they gave like 20 some people 600 milligrams for 6 days. At the end of that, 90% of them tested negative. Where the control group that they didn't give it to, 96% still are positive.
Oh, wow. Well, that seems very fucking effective to me. Why aren't they? Yeah, it's like one of the things like, good, get government out of the way. Let's go, roll it out.
The other one, chloroquine, has a bit more side effects, but it's what they give the people in the army to like combat malaria.
Is the side effect dying?
A lot of people in the army are like, they feel like it makes you feel like kind of crazy for a little bit. This girl I knew in high school and grade school too, she ended up, her husband murdered her after their honeymoon. He was saying that the malaria drugs made him like crazy and that's why he did it.
Yeah, sure.
But that's the chloroquine. The hydrochloroquine has less side effects like that. My wife has not killed me yet, so it's
that's where that buddy has killed his, or whatever, the guy who killed his wife in his honeymoon.
But I mean, if we,
I could have strangled her on her deathbed and then framed Gilda for it.
If we have a cheap, available way to treat people to get this, like all this madness can end.
We'll do
it. But Rico pointed out the FDA is like, oh, hold on. We need to do more tests and we need to do this and that. It's like all the stuff that's making this a big deal is the FDA and CDC getting the fucking way.
Well, here's the thing too.
Get out of the way.
Well, look, if you already have an approved drug that fucking works, it doesn't kill people when you give it to them. What's the problem with giving it to people for a different use right now? Who fucking
I think doctors can do that, right?
Well, they should be able to.
Well, they passed the right to try bill anyway, so even if it was brand new, we could do it. But this has been around for 50 years.
Well, wasn't there there was a cancer treatment, though, that a lady at Harvard found a cure, not a cure for cancer, but something that effectively stops cancer from metastasizing. And she's like, I just combined a bunch of other drugs together and it's effective. And the FDA is like, well, we got to wait. That's got to be put on hold. Even though they're already all approved. It's just putting them together in a different way. But they're like, no, I can't do it. Can't do it.
This is what people want, though, in this country. Yeah. They want regulations for everything. Mm-hmm. They want certainty. And that's what is driving this hysteria, is that there's not certainty. Trump can't tell you, yeah, I'm certain you personally and no one will get this and no one will die. Well, that's true for everything. And then people, one thing that kind of like a pet peeve of mine is people reposting other shit on Facebook from some person that you'll never know. Like, oh, this epidemiologist in Montana said this is just a start. It's like, okay, well, there's a million people, like there's a million fucking assholes. You know, everyone, whatever the opinion is.
Sandy's shared that. My wife's a wonderful and intelligent woman, but
she's the guy who talked about what happens to you.
Yeah, well, it's like a text message that like, well, this is what I heard. This is what I heard. It's like, this is fucking bullshit. This is fucking bullshit.
I've seen so many posts of my friend's cousin who's in the National Guard said in 2 days it's going to be until.
I guarantee those are goddamn people.
I do think martial law may be coming, but
let's make our predictions then.
I don't think the person. Oh yeah, should we do predictions?
Yeah, let's do it because let's do
predictions and then wrap up.
Have our Degenerate Gamblers 3-man beer pong tournament / live show, and we have to figure out how we're going to do this. So yeah, we got to wrap.
So do your prediction, and then if you have any advice at the end, give that.
All right, I think Rico's frozen. Rico,
you're frozen. Yeah. If you can hear us. Oh wait,
can you hear me?
I can hear you. We can't.
Your video
you're frozen. Okay, my prediction is we will definitely see a federal lockdown. There's too many people calling for it. Too many imbeciles. Too many governors. All these people. We're going to see a federal lockdown. I think if it goes on for more than 2 weeks, you're going to see the American population actually start to rebel, especially as we see that the deaths are not as high as they're claiming to be, that people are going to hit a wall. And if the government insists on it, like I've heard through the end of April, if something like that happens, you're going to see people say, fuck you, we're not going to do it. We're opening back up and the consequences be goddamned. That's my prediction.
I agree that more and more states measures are going to be taken. I do not see society getting back to a relative normal till at least mid-May. I think April we're fucked.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think one of the reasons too is that the media, if you want to lump them as an entity, is so invested in this being bad. They do not want to like if this is not bad somehow, that's a win for Trump.
Yep.
Right? If this isn't like 4 or 5 times deadlier than the flu, that's a huge win for Trump. So it's almost like they're kind of rooting for this to be bad, or at least people to panic and the stock or the economy to crash. Because if it's not as bad as they're saying, then it's like you have to give credit to Trump for it not being that bad because you've torn him up for how he's reacted.
Well, look,
I think
Okay. I was just saying, isn't this a win-win though for government? That's the thing that's the most fucked up with this. This is why the conspiracy comes in.
Well,
it's a win-win. It's an absolute win-win.
Unless the
government's not going to get overthrown. That's not going to happen.
I mean, if the economy completely collapses and people like
look, if the economy completely collapses, but we have a very low infection rate and it's stopped, right? Then the economy collapses and they go, we had to do it, but the government protected you, and we had to do it. And now we have all these authoritarian powers. So the government gets more powerful, gets more control, and can take credit for stopping the virus, right? So there's a win right there. And then let's say this does become a larger pandemic. It's still a win for the government because they say, well, we have to lock you down even further and have even more control to stop this in the future.
We needed to do more.
Exactly. We should have done more. So it's a fucking win-win for the government either way. It has nothing to do with projections, but I throw it out.
Here's a long-term prediction. The governor of Ohio is going to be the Republican candidate for president in 24.
Who is that?
He seems to be the lead, Mike DeWine.
Are you guys locked down in Ohio?
No, but everything that has happened across the country, it's almost like he's been the lead, and everyone's fucking praising everything he does, like locking down bars. I think Ohio was one of the first ones. Getting everyone out of school, like Ohio. Like he's on there every day. He's even suspended the primaries, the election this week. Which a lot of states didn't do. But he's like more and more, he's a Republican, but he's more and more status measures and everyone loves it.
I don't think the election's happening.
Well, that would be hilarious.
It's not happening.
Right?
That would be hilarious.
The November election, Trump's like, it's not safe.
The media, all the media, they've been like, Trump's not going to leave. He's not going to obey the leaving the office. Then it would come true. And I'd have to be like, well, I guess you're right on one thing.
He's like, are you happy or sad about it? Because you wanted him to do something.
They'd be happy. They'd
and now
all
he
be
did
over
what you were
the moon.
afraid he would.
Yeah,
oh, yeah, they would.
They'd all be over the moon. They'd have stuff to talk about until he left office. But yeah, economy-wise, I don't know. I think the economy. The thing is, it should come back. Even though people are getting hit hard, it should come roaring back very quickly once people are like, "Oh, this was all bullshit." So I would say back to normal by July, but there's always going to be, I mean, you can't make up for the lost wages and revenue and the stock market crashing down like it has.
So this is not good advice, but if things continue to track like exactly like this Event 201 thing that they did in their simulation, the stock market lost 40%, which from our high would have brought it down to 18,000 would have been the low. So that would be like the bottom where you'd want to get in if things are going to go back from there. If things happen, if this is all actually run by the elites.
Yep.
I think so that's my recommendations is I think you should buy stock in about a week and a half.
Yep.
I think it's going to bottom out then because there's nothing wrong infrastructurally, if that's I know it's not a word, but like we weren't in a war. Well, we are in a war, but nothing got bombed here. Nothing is blown up here. Our infrastructure is still intact. These companies like, for example, United, the airline stock was at its high. It was $96. Right now, it's like $25.
Oh yeah.
Why? They're the number one. Yeah, like they're not going out of business. Yep. The government's not going to let them go out of business. So I think I'm going to buy their stock at about 20.
I am with you, man. And also here's what I've been waiting for. I'm waiting for
the road open back up to Asia.
Well, here's the thing. I'm waiting for the official announcement of we're sending out checks, right?
They are.
I know. Okay, but I want to know when they're sending them.
I'm not getting the full amount, though. I'm getting like a reduced amount.
Well, I'm thinking that you're right. I should. Well, in fact, they already announced they're going to send them out. I want to time it so that the week before people get their checks, I want to buy the stocks. Like when they get them, because I guarantee half people to get those checks, if they don't need the money urgently, I go, well, I'll buy stocks. I'm going to do it. Like I already talked to my wife.
Don't invest in anything that's not allowed to be open.
Well, I already talked to my wife. I am going to invest in MGM casinos, man. I made my most money ever on the stock market buying MGM at 7. Right now, it's about right there, and it's going to come back in a fucking huge way. Just always bet on sin. That and the airlines. I'm with Rico. I'm going to definitely buy
you
airlines.
Guys are right.
I don't know if you guys are good and
You guys are right.
I don't. Go ahead, Ali.
you guys are right. Like Rico, nothing's gotten destroyed in infrastructure or anything. But I thought it was funny. A reporter asked Thomas Massey the other day, like, well, besides this though, the fundamentals of the economy are still good, right? And he's like, well, to me, the most basic fundamental is somebody gets up in the morning and they go to work and they either make something or provide a service. That's not happening. So no, the fundamentals are not good.
No, but the
I understand
plants are still,
they have not been destroyed.
And the other thing I wanted to ask, I don't know if anyone is a financial guy in the Pride or anything, but my brother I was talking to him today. He's like, what I was thinking is if you could sell your stock today and immediately rebuy it, okay, you would take a huge capital gains loss, which you could spread out, I think, over 3 years.
Yeah.
Meaning you're not going to be paying taxes for 3 fucking years. Maybe
you can only claim a certain amount each year. That's why it spreads.
Right. So you spread it out. But maybe you lose $100,000.
Because after I worked with Peter Schiff's company, I was able to spread out some losses for years.
Yeah. Thanks, Peter. But say you rebought, so you still had the exact same amount of shares, but you're going to be minus the transaction cost. So maybe it's like 8,000, 10,000, whatever. But instead of paying thousands and thousands in federal tax every year, you're paying nothing because of the capital gains losses you're spreading out. You're just paying that one-time transaction fee. So I don't know if he was going to talk to the guy that we invest with and see, but I'm like, oh, that's a really good idea. Yeah, because if I get out of paying taxes for 3 years from this, well, then fuck it. I don't care.
Yeah.
So I think if anyone has stocks or knows anything about, how that would work, let us know.
Can I do my prediction now?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sure, you're allowed.
So that'll do it for this conspiracy corner. Thank you.
All right. My prediction is, I don't know. If
did all the time to think about it?
If hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine ends up to be a good treatment and the FDA doesn't get in the way, I think this crisis goes away relatively quickly and we're fine. If it plays out and we have to deal with it like the numbers like everybody else has been doing, I think it's going to be like a 0.5 to 1% max case fatality rate in the US where we'll see 50% people get it. So that'd be, I don't know, 750,000 deaths if we don't have a good treatment or the vaccine. I know they're working on this RNA vaccine where it doesn't actually even use the virus, but they're just trying to code into your system, make these kind of antibodies. We'll see how that all turns out. I know I'm not getting it though until it's been out for a year or two. We'll be the first on that train.
Yeah. Me neither.
But yeah,
no way I'm getting that.
I think we may have a good treatment method and things might not be very bad. I think if it plays out the way it's on track to, it would be a 0.5 to 1% with 50% of the people. And I do think if this drags on, we have a good chance of martial law nationwide. I don't think the American people would allow that to go on longer than 2 months.
2 months seems long.
Yeah, I don't even know.
And so what they're talking about an 18-month, 2 months lockdown, 1 month free, 2 months lockdown, 1 month free.
Yeah.
And it's no. You can't do that while we still have the guns.
No.
All right, kids, enjoy your beer pong tournament.
Yeah.
I would almost say how it could be invited on since it's crazy times we're living in.
I don't know, man. We have to maintain some.
I made a bet with Brian, and I was wrong. Unless Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders dies and somehow Elizabeth Warren becomes the candidate, I don't deserve to be on.
Yeah, you don't. What do we bet? $100?
It was 50 or 100, but I bet that she would be the candidate and Stacey Abrams would be the VP. If Stacey Abrams is still the VP, could I get half?
All right, we'll say 25 instead of 50.
Can I come out for half a show, maybe?
No.
All right.
All right, man.
Enjoy your lockdown. Peace.
Yeah, bye later.